So, Lebelo, I think maybe I'll just start with you. Not a question, but just hearing what has come out from today. Is there anything specific that you want to respond to that you kind of already know that this is a question that's coming?
To start off with, I would want to thank the organizers of the session. I think the session was well organized and with very good relevant speakers and good relevant topics that were addressed. So thank you very much to Jabulile and her team for putting this together. Let's give them a round of applause. If you take the theme that was presented by our key speaker, for me, it was quite an eye-opening message that is relevant, not only at a business level, but also at a personal level. It's simply saying, do you know what lies out there, and how do you prepare yourself for it? But how do you prepare yourself for the unknowns? And most importantly, how do you take advantage of the situation that we are facing? It is easy to be faced with a situation and then fall down saying, well, I've tried my best, it has come to an end, there's nothing I can do about it. But what he was explaining as examples in his own personal life, it was taking advantage of that difficult moment and saying, what do I do with the assets that I have? And assets does not necessarily have to be physical assets. Human capital is an asset. How do you take that and use that to help yourself through a difficult time? So for me, that would be the most important key message for the day, Ntsiki.
Okay, thank you. And then, Jabulile, coming to you, I just want to pick up on a question that somebody asked earlier on around pricing and how do you compare and the research behind that. And couple that with Bandile's question, who says, what are the key components that procurement teams look at when evaluating differences in prices between companies? Is there something that you could advise SMEs to be mindful of?
Yeah. I think the question has been responded to by the previous speaker, because I think it's very important that you do your research. You need to understand your product. You need to understand your product placing in comparison to your competitors. You also need to understand the key components that make up your pricing metrics. So you need to understand as to, why would you want to price at that particular point? So what is your cost? What are your cost drivers? Are you competitive in terms of how you're sourcing? Are you ensuring that you're using the right raw materials for your product that you want to offer? If it is a service, are you just closing your eyes and hoping that the price is going to hit? Or are you actually quite clear in terms of where the pricing is at? So I think the speakers throughout today have mentioned the importance of doing your market research and understanding, what are the fundamentals and what are the drivers for your own business. And as she has mentioned, as Ntsiki has mentioned, procurement specialists tend to know in terms of they do their own business intelligence. They do understand what the pricing is at. They're not just looking at the competitor pricing, but they're also looking at, what actually makes sense, which is why it's important also not to price low. Because if you price very low, it gives an impression that you don't know your business, and it therefore means that you're not going to be able to supply me sustainably. So are you sure in terms of whether the price that you're putting on the table is actually making sense, or are you thinking, if I come at a very low price, I'm going to come in and then change the price later on? Because if you actually do that, it's a sign that it's not a supplier that you really want to deal with. So it's really about making sure that what you are doing is informed by something. And really, this is a message that we've been trying to get across throughout the series, to say, know your business, understand the fundamentals, understand the processes, understand the drivers, and understand what is it that you need to do to make sure that you present yourself and show up when you do get the opportunity.
Fantastic. And I think from all the speakers and the different panels we've had today, there was a discussion on the opportunities that exist and thinking about trends and where we're going in the future. And I think Ben's question picks up nicely on that. And he wants to know, are we capacitating Sasso business hubs to align to the said opportunities?
Yeah. So from an opportunity perspective, we've mentioned this previously in terms of, on our side, supply chain opportunities will be made available on linkage. I think I just want to emphasize again, we need to bear in mind that if there is an opportunity and it's already contracted to, it's really not an available opportunity. So if you've got a contract in place, I think, if somebody were to get work at Sasso, they would not want to be halfway through the contract and get to find out that contract is taken away. So we do have to honor the contracts that we have. And when the time comes and those opportunities become available, they'll be made available on the platform. But also we need to be clear, what opportunities are we talking about? Is it skills, which then is running through a skills development program, which is different from, your entrepreneurship kind of opportunities, which obviously will then run through the supply chain platform. So if people are looking for opportunities that relates to our CSI, then our CSI, our process will then be followed.
Awesome. I just want to give the room opportunity to ask questions. Does anybody have a question before we let Mr. Lebelo go to his 4 p.m. appointment? Okay, can I get a microphone here in the front for the gentleman at the first round table? And then anybody else have a question so that we can ready ourselves to come to you? I think you must get a participation prize for all your questions today. Afterwards, can we get the mic at the back to the gentleman sitting there? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon once again. I'm Timothy. My company is Matsinye Trading and Construction. I'm registered with Linkage. I was graded platinum. Then I was booked for a safety audit with Sasso for rendering underground services with Sasso Mining. We scored 91%. That was compliant. Then we booked for technical audit. Then when I followed up with the lead auditor, I was given a feedback that we were compliant as well. The audit went very well. Then I received an email from Lydia that says I should update my Ariba profile so that they can proceed with the vendor creation for my company. Then after that, after a month, when I followed up, I couldn't get the response from either the lead auditor and the other guy who was involved in the audit. And since from then, I've been sending emails to the auditing team. Nobody has responded yet. And as I'm sitting here, I'm very much disappointed and heartbroken for all the efforts and hard work that I've done. And all of a sudden, everybody dropped me like that with no way forward. Can please somebody assist? I interacted with Nebo, the regional manager of SMMEs in Secunda area. I haven't got feedback as well. I've forwarded all the emails. Can please somebody assist?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think we understand your frustration and we apologize for the inconvenience. If somebody can just get his details and let's follow up from a procurement perspective. You can speak to the gentleman behind you and give him your details and we'll follow up on that.
And then, Lebelo, mindful that we've got 2 minutes left before you have to leave. So Patrick has a question specifically for you, and he says, what does Mr. Lukhele need from SMMEs trying to provide a service to Sasso? What is the common mistake and barriers for SMMEs?
Sorry, just where the
So his
question
first question is, what do you need from SMMEs in order to service Sasso? And then secondly, what are some of the common mistakes that you see?
All right. What we do need is a service provider who behaves themselves in an ethical manner. Ethical manner not only in not offering bribes or taking bribes, but ethical in committing to saying when you are contracted to do a particular scope, you've got the means and capability to do so. We do find SMMEs who bid for work, they get to subcontract it to others and they use those subcontractors' bids, but when time comes for them to execute the work, they are unable to do so. In fact, some would cancel orders a day before it's due for delivery. And it is frustrating the hell out of the system, particularly some of us who are driving transformation, that the suppliers we bring on board are unable to perform. You create a bad name for those who are actually working hard to perform. Common mistakes are things like expectations that Sasol almost owes you something. You believe your mistakes will be forgiven because you are an SMME. They will not be. You are a service provider, you've gone through an accreditation process, you've given us the assurance that you are a prudent operator. We will therefore measure and manage you as a prudent operator. Where you are unable to do so, that's why we have our Enterprise and Supply Development Division that can assist in closing some of the gaps. So when you also do pricing, Jabulile touched on it, you either price yourself out of the market because you want to close all the gaps and the monies that you've lost over the months, you lose the business and then you blame us. Or sometimes you underprice yourself so badly such that it is clear in anybody's mind that you will not be able to make profit out of this work and we will therefore not not then give you that work. You've underpriced yourself. So you need to know your business, you need to know your operating costs, you need to know what your margins are, and we will assess you accordingly. But don't try and pull wool over our faces. We've been in this game for a very long time. We'd be able to see through that. But SMMEs in particular, when they do start making themselves vulnerable to fronting and bribery activities, is a big concern for us, and we have a zero tolerance for fronting, where you sell your soul for a little return with other parties that would see you lose even your integrity.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I was informed that you have a hard stop at 15:55, so we will let you leave, but thank you so much for your time and making the time to respond to some of our questions. Please give Mr. Lukhele a round of applause. Okay, and then the gentleman there at the back, let's take your question. And then just a quick scan of the room. Does anybody else have a question, or are we happy? Yay, now the hands are like, oh, time is running out. Do any of the ladies have a question? I'd much like to give a lady an opportunity to ask a question before we wrap up. Any ladies going once, twice, thrice? Okay, I'll give it to the gentleman in the white shirt sitting right at the end. So after his question, please, can he get the microphone?
Okay, thank you very much. My question directed to the panel, especially the procurement expert, is around local content declaration requirements. What is the purpose of having it, and what opportunities are there for, especially for SMEs, that we might not be aware of? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whether it's meant for me or Zinhle, but let me attempt to respond to your question. So I will not talk to technical local declaration requirements because I do not know those, so I better come clean. But let's talk about the concept of localization. So when you're talking localization, you're talking about the importance of inclusion of the local SMEs that are in that particular community. But as you satisfy the requirements of the localization, assuming that you are a customer to a particular company that has got localization requirements, you've got to look at what is it that is in their value chain that makes sense. Because otherwise we're just doing it to tick a box, right? So you've got to look at what are those things that you need, let's say SMEs in that particular area, and you've got to be able to then sort of use the localization requirements as a lever to make sure that you're facilitating the process of inclusion. So you would then look at what are some of the activities that are taking place, what are the requirements in your value chain, what are the products that you need, and then you can be able to say that, tell me what is it that you can offer in solving that particular problem. And so it differs in terms of how each company will then deal with that strategically. So do you have set-aside strategies that need to address the requirements of that particular community? Are there SMEs in that particular community that can actually respond to the opportunities that you have? Because there are certain situations where you may actually have something that you can make available, but doesn't mean that you will necessarily have participation from that particular community, depending on the level of maturity of the SMEs that you find in that particular community. So I think at a very high level, it is really around saying, how do we make sure that there is inclusion of SMEs that are basically in that particular environment, and how do we make sure that the opportunities are creating, jobs, they're driving sustainability, and really all of those. Zinhle mentioned the importance of understanding what is in each company's annual reports, what is in their sustainability reports, because they sometimes give you an idea in terms of what are the pain points for that particular company, which you as an SME need to understand so that you can position yourself for that particular opportunity that can be available. That should they have localization strategies or set-aside strategies, you can be able to participate in those. And really the reason why we had this series is about, we keep on saying, how do you prepare yourself? How do you look at what is coming up? We've spoken about just transition and the important factors within the context of just transition. So you now understand that there's a whole buzz around green hydrogen. You understand that we're moving away from coal. Are you preparing your businesses for those opportunities? Or are you going to say, why are we not getting opportunities when you're actually not even prepared for those opportunities? So it's really about saying, you also take this information as an input and reflect and say, how do you make sure you make the necessary changes in your own organization?
Thank you very much. And sir, on this side, can we get just a concise question from you? Thanks.
Good day. My name is Mandla Ignatius Matebula from Camilla Property Investment. We are town planning consultants. How long does it take for Sasso to conduct auditing once you are graded platinum? Second one, where to from here? For SMMEs in a blue category, what are we going to do? Now we've done with the webinar, where to from here? Thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe just to explain the gradings are informed by the compliance factors that are in your organization. You've had the speakers today to say that that's really what gets you into the door. So the idea, at least at the very, at this point, but then we're obviously getting to a point where we start looking at it, what are the basic technical requirements that you need? Your basic SHRI requirements as demanded by the OSH Act that you need to have in your own organization. So we're going to get to that point where we're saying that what are those, and they're going to determine what your grading is at. So, so the basic things like, are you compliant with SARS? If you're not complying, then you're obviously not going to be platinum. What is the status in terms of your CIPC annual reports? If you haven't submitted, you're not going to be getting into platinum. So the starting point is to then look at, as you get your grading report, what is outstanding from your own business? And most of the stuff is the stuff that you need to deal with, not necessarily that we need to deal with. We're just putting up a mirror for you to see as to where the gap is at. Now, when you get to platinum, you're saying what happens. I've said it's all driven by opportunities. If you get to platinum and we do not have a need for your services at that point, we're not going to move to the next point because there's no need for the service. But if an opportunity arises, then we're going to push to get to the point where we take you through to the grading process. But without an opportunity becoming available, we cannot then, it's almost like you wait, right? And I think what SMEs need to understand is that there are so many people that are doing what you're doing. Right? So previously we ran a civil masterclass, and in Sasolburg we had more than 100 people. They were all in the civil space. And you think that it's like, why am I not getting an opportunity? The point is, how are you differentiating yourself from the next guy? Because you're all civil, you're all doing the same thing. You're all competitors. There's only a single opportunity. So it's really, there is a need to understand that as you run businesses, you're not taking any guy that walks down the road and you're making them an employee of your own business. You have to see as to whether you have a need for that person to be employed. Similarly, in a corporate environment, similarly in our own environment, we cannot just take any supplier just because they're ready and we make them to say, okay, come and supply us a service. There needs to be a need first before you can be able to respond to that need.
Fantastic.
And I'm hoping you're doing that for your businesses, right? Because otherwise, they're not going to last.
Lots of great detail there, and I think we can continue to have these conversations during our networking session. There is a comment here from Lebelo. I do see your question, and I'll just ask, because we have run out of time, I'll just ask our team at the back who's moderating to just assist with responses to those questions. But again, if you do need to contact Sasol, the email address is info.esd@sasol.com. So any other queries, if you want to follow up on anything, if you registered and you're not sure what to do next, please send an email to that address. Jabulile, I'm going to leave the stage and hand over to you to do our closing remarks for today.